We're looking at a wild weather setup that's going to have blizzard conditions up here in the northern US and then some very strong severe weather down here in parts of the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys, as well as just the general central to eastern US. It's likely going to be a very strong QLCS, not going to rule out the threat of a couple of prefrontal storms, and this would be for all hazards. And that also includes the threat of some strong tornadoes. This would be for Sunday as we move off into Monday. Once again, we're looking at a really big day that's expected. Not as much blizzard conditions, still going to be some up here in the northern parts of the US. By then, hopefully, a lot of this will have moved up into Canada on the winter storm side of things. But for the severe weather, I actually like this day more if we're looking at just pure ingredients for producing catastrophic severe weather, which would still include all hazards and that threat for damaging tornadoes. So starting off with today's Saturday, it looks like we're going to see our winter storm start a little bit. Not going to be near anything what we're expecting on Sunday, though. It looks like we're expecting a pretty good dusting up here in parts of the Northeast, and then also up here in the northern Rockies and northern plains, specifically far western Montana and then northern Idaho. That looks like a isolated area where we could receive up to 20 inches of snow. As we move into Sunday, though, you're really going to want to watch this area anywhere from central Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the Michigan Peninsula, and then northern Michigan. You're about to see a bomb of snow go off. This is going to be close to 40 inches in a little over 24 hours. This would go into Monday, though, where we're still seeing snow accumulation, specifically up here in the Michigan Peninsula. Nothing what we're expecting to see on Sunday, though. And then Sunday night, we could potentially see snow totals of up to 3 inches per hour. And that would be with some really strong winds as a very, very strong low pressure system moves through. Our snow accumulation might actually sag down into Iowa, also parts of northern Illinois. Should avoid Chicago for the most part, but once again, this little sector right up here is where our most extreme accumulation is going to be, and that is no doubt going to be a blizzard. On top of that, we're expecting some freezing rain accumulation, which of course is going to sag a little bit south of where most of our snow accumulation is going to be. For this, anything over a quarter inch is really bad, and in this band, we're seeing widespread over a quarter inch. This band would spread through parts of northeastern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and then up through parts of northern Michigan. Northern Michigan looks to be the bullseye for where the most catastrophic ice accumulation would be, but with these ice storms, it's kind of hard to know exactly until the day of. So this is definitely something that I'm going to want to watch, and I'll definitely keep giving updates in tomorrow's video. But now we're going to move on to our severe weather setup. Not going to really focus too much on it here because there's very high confidence that we're going to get a very strong line of thunderstorms, which covers up a very large warm sector, actually. And this is going to move eastward. Right now, everything is pointing towards we're seeing initiation towards later Sunday. So it looks like during the day Sunday, we might actually get bailed out a little bit. But as we go into the late afternoon, evening, that's when we're really going to see that line deepening down and starting to reduce those big hazards. Another thing with this, there's some decent confidence. Even the SPC has kind of highlighted a risk area out here or extended it a bit more because there's going to be quite a bit of advection coming off the Atlantic into parts of the southeastern US where we could get a couple of blips, and the shear out here is going to be very favorable for supercells. So not super sure on what the hazards are going to be there yet. Definitely going to anticipate maybe a tornado or two, damaging winds, and then also some hail, but that's not going to be the main risk. It's going to be this big line, and then any potential prefrontals that come out in front. Definitely there is going to be potential there with all of this southerly flow going kind of straight up the line. There is going to be potential for confluence bands to form. Can't really call anything this early though. And then also with the ingredients, I think the southern sector is an area which we're definitely going to be seeing perform. And this northern sector is a high ceiling, but also a very, very low floor. And then as we transition into Monday, I think this is when we could see things probably peak, in my opinion. I just think there's going to be more robust moisture instability, then the shear is going to stay the same. And then also, there would still be potential for those prefrontal cells. So let's look at the ingredients. We're going to have a very strong low pressure system, and that's going to drape down a cold front, kind of right here where you see the isobars kind of bending in like that. Those are called pressure tongues. And this is going to be a very sharp and fast moving cold front. So, absolutely no doubt that we're going to see storm initiation along this, and our storm coverage is going to be very, very good. This is likely going to initiate storms probably when our trough, which is really the main driver of severe weather with this event, not the main initiator though, but main driver for this, when it overspreads this cold front, that's when we're going to see storm initiation probably later in the day. It looks like our trough is going to eject later, or at least that's what the trends are showing. Very, very sharp cold front. We're seeing probably 70-degree temperatures on one side, then on the other side, maybe down to 35. And this is going to be absolutely moving across the US. And as we go into Tuesday or Monday, same thing. Very sharp cold front, absolutely ripping across the US. Still very strong low pressure system. Closer up to this, better shear, more south, better ingredients. That's definitely going to be how this is going to play out. Now we're going to look at our dew point. Moisture, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing for thunderstorms, and it looks like there is just going to be a lack of it up in this northern sector. Closer to our lower low is going to be right up around here. Ideally, we'd want to see closer to 60 and mid 60s. We're definitely going to have that down in our southern sector, probably anywhere south of the Tennessee-Kentucky border. I think we'll have a higher chance of producing hazards, but up here in the north, we're seeing dew points of only around 53. That's probably not going to cut it, in my opinion. But as we go into the night, we're actually going to see something interesting. The models specifically have trended up on that moisture advection. Now we're seeing close to 60 up here. And at that point, the main inhibitor of this event would actually be the lack of instability, which is definitely a big one. But as we go into Monday, though, we're going to see much more widespread moisture that's going to be definitely deep enough for these storms to produce those significant severe hazards. We've looked at the moisture. Now we're going to look at our instability. And once again, kind of like the moisture, there's a bit of a lack of it. Definitely more in the south concentrated. Down there, we're seeing instability anywhere near probably 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram, right up along that line. If you go a little bit more north, though, not really seeing that as much, probably only 200 to 500 Cape. Of course, there's going to be much more of a concentration right up along our cold front and where our storms are, but still definitely giving some questions and uncertainty of if those storms will actually be able to produce. But as we go into Monday, once again, there are just more robust ingredients. We have better moisture, better instability, and our shear is going to be quite similar. I think Monday is definitely right now what has the higher floor. And the very last thing we're going to look at are our supercell and significant tornado composites. And we're definitely going to notice a couple of things. Once again, we have the highest concentration going into Sunday night in the south. Definitely much more of a uptrend over the past couple of runs, though, of how much supercell composite is going to be up north here. If we do continue to see a trend like that, it's definitely going to be something to worry about. And this is going to be a system that continues to produce all hazards throughout the night, specifically down here in this southern cluster. I think that's where the instability and moisture is really going to sit. And then as we go into Monday, once again, really solid supercell composite, specifically that bullseye on the Carolinas and Southern Virginia, even pretty far up into Pennsylvania. I think that's just mostly because we have better moisture. And then our SIG-TOR parameter values really kind of agreeing with our supercell composite. I would say the highest down here in the south, hazards all the way throughout the night. Definitely can't rule out a strong tornado along this line in conditions like this. Moving into Monday, still that bullseye on, wow, that's actually really high. Those are significant tornado parameters of around 6.3 along the Carolinas and then Southern Virginia. And then we also see a plume up here into Virginia. That's definitely going to be something to watch for. So, overall, I think all hazards are going to be possible from what I'm seeing here. And I definitely have much more of a confidence in the southern sector of these storms producing. And then on Monday, I think the Carolinas, specifically North Carolina, is going to be the bullseye for that most intense threat of severe weather and even possibly a strong tornado. So now we're looking at weather soundings. All of these are from the NAM model. This is from the northern sector of our what's expected to be at least a very strong line up here in the northern portion that we've talked about. Very impressive photograph. You don't really see photographs like this that often where our shear in the lowest kilometer is so streamwise, and we're seeing that is really high. We're seeing 550 SRH and 50 knots of low level shear. With this, you definitely do not need a whole lot of instability and even moisture to still get those very high and catastrophic results. Then on top of that, we're mixing this with 60 knots of effective shear. These storms are going to have no problem getting organized, but with our instability, we're seeing probably sub 500 Cape. That is definitely going to be a problem. And then we're seeing sub 60s, 2 points. These storms are expected to be surface based. Our lowest free convection isn't that far separated from our LCL, which definitely could help with the potential for severe weather. And then also, these winds are really absurd. Definitely no secret that these winds, if we do get this big result, are going to be kind of the backpack of this event or what's really carrying it. And then, even though we're not really seeing that much moisture, this is a fairly moist first 3 kilometers in the atmosphere, and that's definitely something that would be favorable for severe weather. So, all in all, with this, there's still a lot of questions. I think this is absolutely going to be enough to still see severe weather with these kinematics and shear values and this photograph in the atmosphere to still produce severe weather. Will it be the highlight and will it have as much of a guarantee as the South, though? I still don't think so. And now we're going to pivot over to the southern weather sounding, and immediately you're going to be able to tell why I think that. We're seeing 70 over 66. That's a 66 dew point. Storms are surface based, LFC pretty much touching the LCL. Close to 2,000 Cape or 3 Cape's going to rise a little bit. Nothing too much that should influence it too much, but I think as we get closer to daybreak on Monday, that value is only going to continue to rise. Our effective inflow, close to 450 SRH, 50 knots low level shear, close to 60 knots of effective shear. Once again, very, very favorable photograph. Not as favorable as what we're seeing up in the north. That is to be expected, though, because this is farther away from the low pressure system. But once again, very favorable. This is a sounding that could produce strong tornadoes and just generally all hazards of severe weather. And then last but not least, our lapse rates aren't looking that bad all the way up, probably close to 6 or maybe even 7 Celsius decreasing per kilometer. This is a sounding that does produce pretty strong severe weather. Final thing, this is what we're looking at in the Carolinas, or what we could see in the Carolinas on Monday. Immediately, our Cape, this is what my eyes jumped to immediately. We're seeing close to 203 Cape and over 2,000 regular Cape. So immediately, our instability problem is solved. Then we're seeing 71 over 67, that's 67 dew points. Pretty moist first kilometer of the atmosphere. And then even our mixed level Cape up here, this is pretty fat. This is something that could support some fairly large hail. We're seeing just very strong shear, some slight turning as we go up. Even our effective shear, now we're actually over 60 knots, not just expected to be close to 60 knots. And then our low level shear values, our effective inflow, 450 SRH, 50 knots of low level shear. Photograph. This is a huge curve in the first level and then some looping after that, and a significant tornado parameter of 7, a supercell composite of 23. this is a sounding that is capable of producing strong tornadoes and big hail and some very strong damaging winds. So I'm going to kind of stand on that. I think Monday is going to be the bigger of the 2 days, or at least right now, looks at least like it has a much more ability to at least produce stronger severe weather. Still, both days are going to be very big from the looks of it, unfortunately, and definitely gearing up to be what looks like to be a pretty significant event. And then the final thing I almost forgot, this is really the biggest driver of the event. Look at this trough right here. This is something that you don't see very often, a trough that slowly takes a negative tilt, and then you get this clean of an ejection at 500 millibars. And then also we're seeing quite a bit of 500 millibar flow out in front. And this is going to be what's providing all of that shear for these storms. And look how strong the flow is. We're seeing upwards of 120 knots at the peak of our jet max, close to 140. This is really great. This is a really crazy looking trough that I really have no doubt in my mind is going to be able to produce some strong severe weather. Even at 700 millibars, 700 millibars is exceptionally important for a tornado risk, and then just general severe weather as well. Very, very strong at 700 millibars as well. And our 700 millibar trough actually takes its strongest look on, guess what, Monday. So I think Monday is going to be probably the biggest day. I think Sunday has a lot of questions that will be answered definitely in no time. Still, southern sector, highest potential for severe weather. Northern sector, still quite a few questions to be answered.